first topic of tonight. Okay. First topic of tonight. Joe Rose, is that a vast improvement of me or vast improvement that you're in New York? Let's get started. Okay. So, getting shot on versus getting coached, um, being coached are not the same thing. Now, people go like, well, duh. So I'm a huge fan for a lot of families that reach out to me going like, hey, what should we be doing? What should we be spending our money on? Should we be working with somebody locally? Should we be working with you? Should we, and a lot of times my recommendation is like, listen, one of the best things your goalie can do is if they are somewhat knowledgeable about playing the position, like if they understand like proper technique and movement, then having a bunch of buddies come over and shoot on them, preferably with tennis balls and things like that, um, can actually be the best investment of your money that you could spend. I really believe that. Like, I believe that all Americans are made in the backyard, and especially for goalies, a lot of parents ask me, like, I probably get a question once a week, like, what can I do with my goalie in the backyard by themselves when we're not around a team? One, don't overthink it. Two, just get some shots on them. And so spending money on having like their friends, and I call it like get pizza night, get Gatorades and Cokes and Pops and whatever's and load them up on sugar and have them shooting your goalie is probably some of the best. It's best lacrosse by the pound you can spend money on. Okay. But one of the things that came up this week was I was doing a goalie audit yesterday, talking with a goalie up in the Northeast, and this goalie had sent footage to me of footage that they had been given when they went to a camp. They went to a camp. They went to a rather reputable camp, and overall the experience is good. But this one particular like 5 minutes of shooting that I saw really kind of just bothered me a little bit, and I wanted to talk about that tonight. Okay, so when you send your goalie to a goalie camp or a clinic or a lacrosse camp where they might do all the positions and they bring the kids together, I really like those a lot. But when they get the goalies alone, and they're getting shot on. And so what you usually have in those situations, if there's a lot of goalies, like, so if there's more than like 3 goalies, what you most likely have is you have like one coach who actually understands goalies, and then you have shooters. Okay. And so what was happening to this particular goalie was the person shooting on them, and I would call them a shooter, because I could hear what they were saying to this goalie. So I could hear the head coach saying things and they probably had like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 cages going at once. And I can hear the coach barking out, the same stuff that's been barked out for like 30 years. And then the shooter is like ripping on the goalie and doing a good job, right? Like it was all right. The pace wasn't crazy. Shots were from about like 13 yards. This was on a male goalie. But when shots went in, you heard the obligatory like drive your top hand, or you got to step, and the goalie's like back, before the goalie can basically get back in their stance, the next shot is kind of on the way. All right. And so what I want everybody to remember here is that no matter how good your goalie is, right, your goalie can be one of the top goalies in the country, and this still applies to them. Okay. And if your goalie is brand new, it's even more it's even more kind of important, because what needs to happen here is that lacrosse has what I call one of the lowest transfer rates between the shots a goalie sees in practice versus what they see on game day. Right. And that's inherently because, like, if you've got a coach or a shooter shooting on a goalie, shooting is tiring, right? Stopping balls is tiring. That's why I say, like, after about like 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes of consecutive shots, your goalie's performance is going to start to degrade. And what I mean by that is that the movement will start to get sloppy. And being an elite goalie is all about efficiency of movement. And that's a bit of a theme tonight and all the questions we're going to cover here. There's efficiency of movement. And there's also a a neurological explosiveness that we want to maintain. And so a lot of people don't understand this, but like, you may think of fatigue like, okay, your muscles are tired and you're sweaty and hot and things like that, and you're breathing heavy. But actually, there's neurological fatigue, which is basically the signal from the brain to the muscles, and there's a reactivity that we're looking for, like a quickness, and that quickly degrades. So even when you have like your buddies over to shoot on you for pizza night, your goalie is not going to be able to do that for a solid hour, unless they're like playing for 2 minutes and they take a 5-minute break, and they play for 2 minutes and they take a 5-minute break. And what that does, and what that does is that keeps their reactivity sharp. And so I worked with a strength and conditioning coach back in my Olympic days when there's actually a thing called a tendo unit. There's different versions of this now, but it's basically it looks like an oversized dumbbell, and it has a string. And that string has a clip on the end, and you can attach it to pretty much anything. Like if you're doing a squat, like you can attach it to the bar or a bench press or things like that, or a vertical jump test. And what you can measure then is the speed of the bar. So let's say you can bench press 225 pounds, but let's say you can do that, but it takes a certain amount of time to do that. Well, instead of training, when I worked with a strength and conditioning coach, it was pretty cool. Instead of doing like 3 sets of 10, we found out like what my max number was and the speed that it took me to get there. Okay. And so when that number, so I would do 1 and I get a number, and then I would rest and I would recover, and then I would come back and I would do another one, whether it was a squat or bench press or whatever, you get another one. And if the time that I had was within about 10%, about 8% of my best number, then I kept going. I would rest for 5 minutes. I would come back. I would do another one, and then I would repeat that over and over again. When my time though degraded to about 8 to 10%, I stopped. Okay. Now you can use that as an example. Great coaches will see a goalie and they know that, okay, at a certain point, the quality of the movement has degraded so far that goalie's done for now. And now when you send your goalie to a camp and you've paid like a lot of money, I always say we want to pay for lacrosse by the pound. That's true in games, but in practices, it can be difficult. It can be, you might feel like you're not getting your money's worth, and that's a bit of a problem. And so the good news is when you go to a camp or clinic and there's other goalies around, your goalie can see other goalies if they're looking. And then that shooter, if they're decent, will those shots the shooter is taking won't be anywhere near what the goalie sees on game day or that creative. Like if you have, if your goalie, especially for the girls, right? If you're working like on a sweep in front of the cage from inside 5 yards, and you had one shooter doing that, well, after like 4, 5, 6, 7 reps of that shooter taking like basically a 15-yard run, they're going to be pretty fatigued, and they're going to want to stand still. All right. And so that's where, as a goalie, we have this. It's not like ice hockey. It's not like soccer. It's not like field hockey. The quality of shot that a goalie really needs to understand to learn the language of shooters is very high. And your goalie is not going to get that in practice. Okay. And what ends up happening, is that there needs to be a moment. So this is the problem, is that shooters shoot. And when coaches get involved, they quickly realize that a goalie, everything we're teaching a goalie is all about movement and efficiency, right? So I made a comment on a post today in our group. There's a good young goalie made this great little save, and people were like, "Oh, it really fired that top hand across," and that was true. But also, that goalie had like basically jacked their bottom hand so far underneath their top hand across, so that stick pivoted as opposed to moving the top hand over. That's an inefficient movement, right? Now your goalies feels great, like, "Hey, look, I made the save. That's cool." But I'm looking at that going like, "Okay, that is a habit we want to stop." And if I'm coaching your goalie and I take one shot at your goalie, right, and he does that or she does that, I'm now going to take like 7 minutes teaching that goalie how to properly move across. And we're not even going to shoot. We're just going to say, like, "Hey, this is what you need to do. And this is what you need to do. All right, let's see it. This is what you need." And what are we doing? We're wiring the goalie. Okay, we're wiring the goalie, or we're rewiring the goalie if there's a bad habit involved. Okay, good question here. It drives me absolutely nuts when the only practice saves and not the immediate reaction afterwards. Not surprising. Game day has some phenomenal saves followed by crummy transitions, clears. Yes, that's a good point. The other part of it, though, that affects that I get more concerned with is the idea of like, okay, when a goalie is in practice and they get shot on, even if they make a save, but the efficiency of movement is so bad, um, I look at that. I'm like, that's going to bite that's going to bite that goalie in the ass. Like, and it's great when they're U12 or U14, but when they get into the upper ages of high school and they're missing saves because now all they've been doing is not having that. It's funny. I used to call it a refractory period. Like that was just the term I give it. But I realized that I did some Googling today, and refractory period actually has to do with like ED problems in men, and I didn't realize that. So I got to change. I got to find the real. It's like what I'm looking for is that psychological moment where after the goalie misses a ball, that instead of getting frustrated or mad at themselves, they actually take a moment to realize what it was they did and how to actually move it. So I wrote about this in my book. The best thing your goalie can do after a ball goes by them is to look back at where that shooter was, visualize that ball coming again, and then you have to then the goalie wants to basically replace that negative event with a positive event. And if a shooter is just shooting on them, then the goalie doesn't have any time for that. The goalie's just getting back out there doing one more move, and there's been no time to actually wire the goalie. Right? It's not as deliberate a practice as we could be doing, and that's really important. So for my goalies listening, I want you to, one, you've got to spend time every practice wiring in efficient movement. Okay. Efficient movement. And that's basically getting some part of you in front of the ball, right? Basically on a perpendicular line to the track of the ball, wherever that ball's coming from. Right. And this takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to do that. So as a coach, you get up into a practice, and if I got like 4 goalies to work on, I feel pressure. Like I got to get shots on this kid, and then I got to get shots on that kid, and then I got shots on the next kid. And your goalie is the one who misses out because they're not getting that deliberate practice. They're not getting that deliberate coaching. The refractory period also has to do with the heart. Yes, it's true. That's very true. Yes, because the only feedback is good save rather than suggesting more efficient movements. Yeah, and this is where I guess when I work with goalies, I'm a pretty lucky guy. Like I get to have very quiet individual conversations with goalies on a daily basis. Right. I'm not running through a camp or a clinic where we're just like firing balls at them. And I feel that pressure of like, oh, I've got to, get balls shot on this goalie. And when I worked privately with goalies one-on-one, and when I was flown out a number of years ago to work with a goalie, and I told the dad, I'm like, listen, you're flying me out here to work for 2 days with your goalie. I want you to realize your goalie is probably not going to see a lot of shots. And the reason why is because we're going to be working on efficiency of movement and proper wiring of the goalie. And that takes time. Okay. That takes time. So in that case, I'm not paying for lacrosse by the pound. But when I use that term and you're trying to pick a team or a club team or whatever, that's when you're paying for lacrosse by the pound. I want experience. I want shots on me or on my goalie because I want more clears. I want more rides. I want more, all that stuff, right? That's the lacrosse by the pound. Okay. So that's really, really important. Okay. So for those of you guys that don't have it, so if you go to lacrossegoalieuniversity.com and you download the cheat sheets, inside the cheat sheets are the goalie scorecards. And I know a lot of you guys have that and you use it, but also in there is what I call the lacrosse goalie manifesto and the A to B, C to B race. Okay. So go read that. And you'll start to understand more about like the efficiency of movement. And sometimes with young goalies, it's okay. Like, okay, get them in the cage, keep them excited. This is my entertain, edutain, educate model, right? So no matter what the age is, you get a goalie who comes to you and they've never played the position before. Well, I've got to keep that goalie kind of entertained and safe and having a good time and like basically enjoying the moment so that they come back another day and they still want to be goalie, right? That's the entertain model. The Edutain model is when now I've got a goalie and maybe we started to work together, and now we've gone through that little entertainment phase. They know me, I know them, and now is when we start to go like, okay, listen, hey, you've made like 12 saves over here. They've all been a mess. So now we're going to try to do it this way, right? So now we're sneaking a little bit of educate into that Edutain into that entertainment model. So that's where the Edutain comes in. Now, if a goalie comes to me and they're like, I want to be really good at this, then we jump pretty much right to the Edutain educate part of that model, right? So we spend a few minutes, they get to know who I am, I get to know who they are, and then I get to tell that goalie, all right, listen, you made that save, but here's what was horrible about that. One thing I tell my goalies too is like against better shooters, you would miss that ball. Okay, against better shooters, you would miss that ball. And so that's a really important thing to understand, is that your goalie may be making saves, but the quality of save that they're making is low. Okay, and so you got to really think about that. So I want you to just kind of, as you look to spend money, to invest money on improving your goalie, and this ties into some of our other questions here tonight. It's really important to understand that is your goalie getting quality reps? And what I mean by that is that the shot is coming, they know where it's going, they're working on efficiency of movement, and are they getting feedback right there? Right there. It's like Cesar Millan training a dog, right? It's like we want to reward the dog in the moment, right? We don't want to just like wait a little bit and then reward them later. And it's like paying employees, right? It's like you want to pay them like you want to reward them like right away at the right time. Otherwise, they lose interest. They're like, why are we doing this? Like, what's going on, right? So that's really important to understand those types of kind of reward ratio things and what we're doing, because I see a lot of goalies and people comment in the group and they're like, hey, this is great. Oh, wasn't that great save? Good job, buddy. And I'm going like, yeah, good job, but we got to fix that. And that's where sometimes I can be a bit of a hard ass and not much fun, because I'm just looking for that quality of movement first. And I just believe very strongly that we're either creating good habits or we're creating bad habits. And, a couple of weeks ago, I did a clip, and, the coach who sent me the clip was like, they work with their goalie for a few months and they get a goalie to a certain point, and that goalie goes away to certain camps in the summer, comes back with all these bad habits, and they're bad habits, right? In my opinion too. So, great question. Avery Gao, great. Avery Gaw, right? Gaw is an like, right? And a Notre Dame person, correct, Avery? Big fan of Notre Dame. So thoughts on pregame warm up? This is a great question, because this all depends on the level of play, okay, and the level of goalie. And what I mean by that is that your goalie, your goalie is. So I look at athletes like a glass of water, okay, and so the glass represents the goalie's capacity. The water in the glass represents the demands of the moment, okay. So and an elite performance happens when a goalie there's a reserve between the size of the glass and the amount of water in the glass. Okay. So when you have a goalie who, so like Avery, your collegiate goalie, you're going to go play in a game and you're going to go play Syracuse, right? Or Boston College. And the pressure's high and everything. And so there at that point, to get to peak state, you're kind of like just, you're just focusing on doing the best there. Like you're taking all of your energy and you're focusing it on being your best in the moment. But let's say you're going to another game and you're playing like, whatever, some Eastern Valley community college, right? And you're like, we're going to roll over this team. And so I'm going to use pregame warm up and the game as education moments, right? I'm not going to waste that time as entertainment. I'm going to work. Like, we're going to work. So especially if you're working with a goalie and you're working on something, right? So basically, if a goalie has a bad habit and we're trying to fix that habit, it's like we're taking a vinyl record and we're wiping it clean. The problem is that when we wipe it the first time, we haven't gotten rid of that groove all the way, right? We're still hearing bits of the old song. And so if I go into pregame warm up and I'm working with a goalie and we're trying to get work to something better, and I see that goalie, resorting to bad habits, I'm gonna remind that goalie. Okay, but that all depends on the relationship I have with the goalie. It also depends on the relationship the goalie has with the game. Does that make sense? Right. So with young kids, like and this is one of the things that bugs me a little bit nowadays, when everybody's, it's like every weekend's a tournament, right? Every weekend's a tournament. Every game, every tournament has meaning, right? And everybody's trying to get to the weekend and win the round and all that stuff. It's like, oh my God, the goalies don't feel like they have time to try stuff, right? Or the coaches are so busy with everything else, they don't have time to correct the goalie. So it's one of those things where you kind of have to play it by ear. But I see a lot of young goalies wasting a lot of quality time that could be used to be educated, because everybody's like, oh, we're not going to work. We're not going to work on anything right now because we're just trying to win this game. Does that make sense? Right. And that even happens at the collegiate level. Right. Um, so, it's okay to, at the elite level, it's in any sport, it's okay to come to game day, right? And go, all right, we're just going to take all our available resources, our mental, emotional, physical resources, and put it to there. We're just going to focus on doing the best we can in the moment. Then, as Ben Stone from Australia writes here, we're going to video that. We're going to record that. And then because sometimes for a goalie, they're not in thinking mode there. They're just totally in reactive mode. They're in that high beta mental state. And so they're so amped up and out of it that we can't even teach them anything. And elite performance also happens in that flow state that's right on the cusp of like where the brain waves are firing on all cylinders, but not too far, right? We're not in a panic mode, but we're just like highly alert. We want that. That's where elite performance happens. Sometimes coaching an athlete in that moment brings them out of that. And it's so as a coach, we're just kind of balancing that. But Avery, in a general rule, okay, as a general rule, I would like to be coaching my goalies a lot. Because one of the things that I do with my goalies is by just saying, hey, like, we're always in coaching mode, is we're not taking anything too seriously. Right. We're just going like, all right, we're working on this, right? There's no good or bad, just learning. Right. So that can also bring an athlete that can be high strung and panicky and bring them down a little bit and go like, all right, yeah, okay, I still got to work on this. And kind of bring them more in the moment. So that's Avery, that's a fantastic question. So I hope that answered your question. Okay. Ben Stone writes, I use video from games to review movement because there is no goalie coaching at Justice Club. So no feedback at training. Yeah. So if you got that situation, that's where the goalie, we're trying to get the goalie to be the best coach for themselves. Okay, that's really, really important. And then when we do that, the goalie can start to go what I call they're grading their saves, or they're like, okay, I made the save, but I didn't move as efficiently as I wanted to, so I'm going to give myself like a B- or B+. Right. Or you can use numbers, whatever you got to do. But that's the deal, because then we take a save and we go like, well, how could I have made that save better? It's not just like, it's like 0 to 1. It's not a binary thing. Like, oh, you made a save, you didn't make a save. It's like, well, okay, of the shot you missed, what did you do well? And of the save you made, what could you have done better? Right. And that's really what elite athletes do. But as parents with young athletes, you want to make sure you're not just like hammering your kid. I've got a family that I worked with this past spring where, the goalie was like, mom and dad are both engineers. And so they're all about the numbers and they're all about the angles and they're all about the data. And the kid, it's like God gifted them like the complete opposite. The kid was like, super chill, like surfer kid, like whatever, dude. And so I always had to, when we would do coaching calls, it would be the three of us on the Zoom call. And so dad's looking at angles, mom's looking at numbers, and the goalie's like, I'm like, what are you thinking about this situation? He's like, pizza. Right. So there's that balance you gotta play, but that's only something that as a family. Okay. And so you got to tread lightly if you're the parent coaching your son or daughter. Okay. Really important. So great questions there. Thank you, Avery. That's fantastic. Love that. Okay. So if you guys like that, do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the heart button. That helps the algorithm and all this good stuff. So really good questions here. Really appreciate that. Let me just pull up this. Dan Baker is in. I see you, buddy. Chris Kunkel. There you go. That's who it drives you absolutely nuts. Got that. Good to see you. Okay. I'm finally on this page. Andy Levinson's, you're sending me stuff. Oh, reflect on experiences, learning faster. Thank you. Moment of reflection. Yes. Not refractory period. Because that has something to do with, well, anyway, I won't get into that. Thank you. All right, guys. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening wherever you are. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you like this and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. When you're ready, head on over to lacrossegoalieuniversity.com/coaching so I can work with you and your goalie. And while you're at it, check out athletespecific.com to learn more about mental performance and high performance. You may not know this, but I work with athletes in a variety of sports. Lacrosse is my love, but man, I love athletes and the families who support them. So head on over to athletespecific.com and check it out. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.